I'd now like to ask Warren Allen to come back on stage to give you some information about the IFAC Gold Service Award.
Thank you once again, Jim. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 2 awards to present during this World Congress. The Sempier Award, a consistent feature of our World Congresses, will be presented at the closing ceremony on Thursday. But today, it is my great pleasure to present the IFAC International Gold Service Award. This honour was established in 2010 to recognise those who make an outstanding contribution to the international accountancy profession. Those who receive this award either influence and/or make significant contributions to the accountancy profession and/or its objectives to protect the public interest, conduct him or herself exceptionally in terms of professional conduct and ethics and the quality of work, and make outstanding contributions to the success of a particular project or initiative. Today's recipient gets extremely high remarks on all of these criteria. I am honoured to present this award to an individual known to all of us, whose long and distinguished career epitomises IFAC's mission to serve the public interest, and our vision that the global accountancy profession be recognised as the valued leader in the development of strong and sustainable organisations, financial markets and economies. Ian Ball. Ian has been an international thought leader for many years, speaking out on issues associated with government financial reporting, public sector financial management, and public sector decision-making. He has been and continues to be a strong and vocal proponent of the need for greater government transparency and accountability. As you all know, Ian led IFAC for more than a decade, including through the global financial crisis. During his tenure as CEO, IFAC's presence, outreach, and global influence experienced remarkable growth, addressing the challenges the accountancy profession faced during a turbulent period for both the profession and also the global economy. Ian successfully convinced the accountancy profession that one of its greatest public interest issues was to assist in the achievement of reform within public sector financial management. While serving as the Director of Financial Management Policy and then as Central Financial Controller at the New Zealand Treasury, Ian designed and implemented the government's financial management reform process, leading to the full adoption of accrual accounting in New Zealand. New Zealand was the first nation to undertake reforms of this kind, which have since become a model for all other nations. Ian's contribution to the public sector accounting and the urgent need for reform in public sector financial management also had a significant and lasting impact at the global level. As a member and then the chair of the International Public Sector Accounting Standards Board, it was then referred to as IFAC's Public Sector Committee, Ian initiated setting of international public sector accounting standards, which are now seen as the global benchmarks. Through his influence and actions, more than 80 governments and public sector entities use, are all planning to adopt these standards. Ian became chair of the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy, IFAC International, in September 2013, where he has continued to address global issues of public sector finance and transparency. Ian is also a board member and a chair of the working group for the International Integrated Reporting Council. Ian's accomplishments have been recognised throughout the profession. He is a recipient of IFAC's President's Medal and the New Zealand Institute of Chartered Accountants Life Membership distinction, and he has been named a top 10 influencer by International Accounting Bulletin. Ian is known and recognised around the world for his work, thought leadership, and enthusiasm for proper public sector accounting. It is for this reason he is a most worthy recipient of this award. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present the recipient of the IFAC International Gold Service Award, a friend and colleague to us all, Ian Ball.
That's it. You've lost them.
Mr. President, Warren, to receive this honour is very special, and it's even more special to receive it here in Italy in front of so many professional colleagues and friends. There are two reasons why, for me, receiving it in Italy is special. One of them is personal, one of them is historical. My father came to Italy in the Second World War. He fell in love with the country, the people, and the language. After he retired, he spent over 2 decades teaching Italian in Wellington, New Zealand. That, of course, had profound effects on our family life. Whenever we went out for dinner, we would go to an Italian restaurant and he would engage the waiters in Italian. It was the only chance he got to speak Italian. However, he didn't teach me Italian, but he did try and teach me how to say Pacioli. And I'm sure this brings us to the historical reason. I'm sure that Pacioli's name will be heard many times this week. What is probably less well known is that Pacioli wrote about the development of double entry accounting, but he didn't himself invent it. What he was writing about had been practiced in Italy for probably 2 centuries. And what a lot of people do not realise is that the oldest historic document in double entry were the documents of the commune of Genoa in northern Italy. So government accounting had its origins very early on. Unfortunately, some governments in the meantime have lost their way. In receiving an award like this, there are obviously very, very many people and organisations and institutions that have supported the work that I've done through my career. I don't have time to go through them in any detail, but there are a few that I would like to mention. First, I should recognise, and I suspect there are none in this audience, but my colleagues in the New Zealand Treasury and the ministers who were, I think, courageous enough is the word, to essentially give us a blank sheet on which to design a governmental financial management system. And that was implemented more or less directly as designed. So that was a very real act of courage on their part. And I have to say, personally, with looking back on this development 25 years later, it's with real satisfaction that you can see the impact that it has had on the New Zealand economy. While I was working in the New Zealand Treasury, it became very clear that some of the issues that New Zealand had faced were faced in many other countries, and it seemed to me obvious that one should try and address some of these issues at the international level. Which brings me to IFAC. And first of all, this being an award from IFAC, Warren, I just have to say thank you and thank IFAC for the huge honour that this does me. Thank you for the award. Of course, there are many people in IFAC who have supported this mission to get improved governmental accounting and financial management, staff, members of the boards and committees, but especially those people who have served on the Public Sector Committee or the International Public Sector Accounting Standards Board and their chairs. But there are a few people that I especially want to thank tonight within the IFAC family. The first of these is Peter Agars, who's already been mentioned tonight, the late Peter Agars, who was president when the IFAC board appointed me to the role of chairing the PSC, and that provided the opportunity to initiate the program on international public sector accounting standards that Warren indicated. Secondly, I'd like to recognise the past president and the board at the time, Juan Herrera. It's a sporting expression, but it was really against the run of play that Juan and the board allowed the Public Sector Committee to begin setting international public sector accounting standards. That was not really something that IFAC was doing at the time. And finally, I must also acknowledge Aki Fujinuma and Renee Ricole, who were instrumental in moving me into the position of Chief Executive Officer, where I could continue to work on this project for some further 11 years. So a deep gratitude to all of those people and organisations. And finally, I should also, in giving my thank yous, reflect on the contribution made by what was then the New Zealand Institute of Chartered Accountants, is now the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Australia and New Zealand, for the support they gave both in my international work within IFAC, but also in the work that I did within the New Zealand Treasury. It was a case of collaboration between the profession and the government. Yesterday I was in a meeting of the Confederation of Asian and Pacific Accountants, and the incoming IFAC President, Olivia Kirtley, was speaking about the role of accounting in society. And it had me reflecting on what motivated me to pursue this objective of getting improved governmental accounting and financial management. And it really went back to when I was in my second year of accounting studies. I was 18 years old, and during my long summer vacation, I worked in a government department. And even as a second year student, it was very apparent that the government was not using the financial information that ought to be available to them. And not only were they not using it, they didn't care that they weren't using it. And that was part of my motivation to try and address this issue. If you reflected in the big picture, there was a book recently published by Jacob Soul. It's called The Reckoning: Financial Accountability and the Rise and Fall of Nations. And I'll just read you a very short quote from that. He says that from Renaissance Italy, the Spanish Empire and Louis XIV's France, to the Dutch Republic, the British Empire and the early United States, effective accounting and political accountability have made the difference between a society's rise and fall. Over and over again, good accounting practices have produced the levels of trust necessary to found stable governments and vital capitalist societies. And poor accounting and its attendant lack of accountability have led to financial chaos, economic crimes, civil unrest, and worse. So good government accounting is really very important. If there's one message I would like you to take away from this Congress, it's that we should, as individual accountants and as institutions of accountancy, go back to our own countries and encourage governments to account and manage their finances in the same kind of way that they expect of the public sector. And I can't close without one final thank you to my wife, April, who has been both a professional and personal support through all this time. And I cannot tell you what a source of good ideas she really is. She has ideas, she has insight, and she's an inspiration. Thank you, April. Thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you, Warren. Thank you, Ian, and congratulations.